At dinner, my wife joked she'd chosen the wrong brother. Everyone laughed, except me. So on her birthday, she opened a big gift box in front of both families, expecting jewelry. Instead, she found divorce papers and silence that finally matched my mood. Hey, Reddit. My marriage looked solid from the outside until little things started stacking up in a way I couldn't ignore. I tried staying calm, keeping the peace, doing everything right, but some people don't stop until you force the truth into the open. Before I get to the birthday where everything cracked, let me start from the beginning. My name's Timothy Reyes, I'm 33, and I work in industrial automation, basically making machines do what people used to do. It's not glamorous, but it's stable and it pays well. I grew up in a close family. My parents, Miguel and Teresa, still live in the same house they bought before I was born. I've got an older sister, Clara, who's the organized one, and a younger brother, Julian, who could charm his way out of a speeding ticket. I met Mara Lewis 4 years ago at a trade expo. She was working the registration desk, and I couldn't get my badge to print. She fixed it, smiled, and made a joke about me looking like someone who presses restart instead of read instructions. We started talking during lunch and didn't stop. 2 years later, we got married. Our first years together were easy. We had a rhythm: weeknight dinners, lazy Sundays, and movie nights that ended with her asleep halfway through. I liked coming home to her voice in the kitchen, the sound of her humming to some pop song. I thought we had something strong. Before the wedding, I asked for a prenup. Not because I didn't trust her, but because the house I lived in was mine long before we met. I'd renovated it with my dad, paid it off early, and didn't want to lose it if things ever went south. Mara didn't argue. She called it smart adulting and laughed, saying, "You're just practical like that." It made sense to both of us. If there was one thing that stood out about Mara, it was her love of attention. Compliments, small jokes, playful teasing, it all lit her up. She'd flirt with waiters, joke with cashiers, and shrug it off as just being friendly. It wasn't malicious. That was her way of connecting with people. I didn't always get it, but I didn't fight it either. Then there was Julian, the Joey Tribbiani of our family. 28, tall, the kind of magnetic that warms a room on entry. Jokes arrive easy. That stupid grin buys him grace he doesn't always deserve. He flirts at the edge of harmless, loyal without measuring space, sometimes closer than he realizes. People call him magnetic. I just call him my brother. Behind the grin, he wasn't reckless with money. Julian runs regional sales for a specialty AV and lighting showroom. High-ticket systems, lumpy but rich commissions. He started visiting our house often after Mara and I got married. The first time he saw her, he gave that signature grin, tilted his head a little, and said, "How you doing?" She burst out laughing. I just poked him in the waist, shaking my head. Sometimes he came to borrow tools, sometimes just passing by. I didn't mind. We were family. Mara loved it when he came over. She'd cook more elaborate meals, wear the nice dress she usually saved for nights out, and laugh harder than usual. Julian would sit in our kitchen, telling stories about work or the girl who dumped him because he was late to her birthday party. Mara always found him hilarious. I noticed little things, how she'd refill his glass before mine, or how she'd touch his arm when she laughed. It wasn't obvious, just subtle enough to make me question myself. Julian, being Julian, was completely oblivious. He joked with her the same way I did with everyone. Light teasing, playful remarks, harmless flirting. I kept reminding myself that's how he was with everyone. Sometimes, after he left, Mara would still be smiling. She'd replay one of his jokes and laugh to herself while cleaning up. Once I said, "He could read the phone book and you'd laugh." She grinned and said, "He's just funny, that's all. You're too serious." I told myself it didn't matter. They were family. She was my wife. There was no reason to read into it. But over time, something started to shift. When Julian came over, she'd practically glow. Her voice was brighter, her energy higher. When it was just us, she'd seem distracted, like part of her was still somewhere else. I'd talk about my day and she'd scroll through her phone, mumbling, "That's nice, babe," without looking up. I started noticing the contrast, the way she looked at Julian when he talked versus how she looked at me. With him, her eyes sparkled. With me, it was just normal. I don't think Julian meant anything by it. He was just being himself. And Mara probably thought she was just having fun. Still, something about it didn't sit right. My mom, Teresa, had been planning this dinner for weeks. She said it was just family, which usually meant a full house. My parents, Clara, Julian, me, Mara, and a few cousins who never turned down free food. The smell of roasted chicken and garlic rice hit as soon as we walked in. It was loud, warm, and familiar. Julian was already there when we arrived, leaning against the kitchen counter, telling Clara and one of our cousins about a customer at his job who brought a parrot into the showroom. He was halfway through doing the parrot's voice when Mara joined in laughing, even though she'd missed half the story. That was Julian's thing. People laughed just because he did. Dinner started out normal. My mom fussed over everyone's plates, my dad kept telling her to sit down, and the cousins tried to sneak extra potatoes before they made it to the table. Mara was in her element, laughing, talking, and keeping the conversation going. Julian sat across from her, still entertaining everyone, feeding off the attention. He started doing impressions of my dad's old co-worker, then of our high school teacher who used to mispronounce everyone's names. The table shook with laughter. I smiled a few times, mostly out of habit. Then Julian turned to me and said, "Timmy, remember how you used to sit in class like a statue? Man, you've always been the quiet one. Bet Mara goes crazy trying to get you to talk." Everyone chuckled, including my parents. Mara laughed the loudest. "Careful, Julian," Clara said. "You're gonna start something." Julian grinned. "I'm just saying. My brother's too serious sometimes." Mara leaned in, still smiling. "You're right, Julian. Maybe I'd be happier with you instead." The room went completely still. Forks stopped midair. The only sound was the clock ticking on the wall. Julian's smile dropped. He looked at her like he wasn't sure he heard right. My mom froze. My dad set his fork down. Clara stared at Mara, and one of my cousins whispered, "What?" under their breath. I set my fork down and tapped the rim of my glass once so everyone heard it. "All right," I said, looking at Mara first. "If you're bored, that's your sentence to say at home, not at my parents' table." Then I turned to Julian. "And you, since you're the entertainer, remind her how long your last serious thing lasted. 3 weeks, right? 2, if we don't count the part where she blocked you." A couple cousins stared at their plates. Clara stopped breathing. I went back to Mara. "You want the fun, brother? Cool. But you don't try out a new car while you're still driving mine." Julian's grin died. Mara's smile twitched into nothing. I pushed back my chair. "Mom, the food was great. Thanks for cooking." Then I stood, tucked my chair in, and walked out through the quiet. When Mara came in later, she didn't speak at first. I was sitting on the couch watching the news, not really watching. She shut the door a little too hard. "You're really just walking out like that? It was a joke, Timothy." But I switched off the TV and faced her. "No, a joke has a punchline. That was a confession with an audience." She scoffed. "You know how Julian is. I was matching his energy. Then match it somewhere that isn't my parents' table." She folded her arms. "You're seriously making a big deal out of nothing. Everyone was laughing. They stopped when you told them what you actually want." She stared at me. "So that's it. That's me adjusting to reality. Message received. Now you get space." That shut her up for a second. Then she said, "You're being dramatic." I turned off the TV and stood up. "I'm not being anything. I just don't want to argue." After that, she went quiet. I slept in the guest room that night. She stayed in the main bedroom. Over the next few days, I stayed polite. I made coffee, left for work, came home, ate dinner, did my usual routine. But I didn't touch her, didn't ask about her day, didn't try to fix anything. She started trying harder, making breakfast, wearing the perfume I liked, leaving little notes. I read them, then threw them away. When she finally asked, "Why are you acting like this?" I said, "You made it clear where your happiness lives. I'm just giving you the room to chase it." She didn't have an answer. While she spent evenings scrolling through her phone or talking to friends, I started quietly rearranging things. I opened a new savings account in my name only. I closed our joint checking and left the small joint savings alone for the lawyers to handle. I canceled the streaming subscriptions, the shared credit card, the delivery services she signed up for. She didn't notice any of it. Maybe she thought the small billing emails didn't matter. Maybe she assumed I'd handle it like always. At dinner one night, she tried again. "You're really going to hold a grudge over something everyone forgot about?" "I didn't forget," I said. "I just don't feel the need to remind anyone." She stared at me like I was speaking another language. "You're not even giving me a chance to fix it." I shrugged. "I didn't break it." She pushed her plate away. "You can't just ignore me forever." "I'm not ignoring you," I said calmly. "I'm just done pretending I didn't hear what I heard." After that, she stopped trying to talk during dinner. The house grew quiet. It was strange how fast the silence became normal. No arguments, no laughter, no explanations. Just space. The kind of space that makes you realize something is ending, even if nobody says it out loud. Mara spent more time on her phone, posting photos with captions about self-care and taking things day by day. She went out with friends, smiling in pictures, tagging restaurants. To anyone else, she probably looked fine. At home, she barely looked at me. Maybe she thought my silence meant I was over it. Maybe she believed things would just reset on their own. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was just watching. And once you start seeing someone for who they really are, it's hard to unsee it. That dinner didn't just change how I looked at her. It changed how I looked at us. Julian texted me the next morning. Lunch? My treat. No emojis, no jokes. That alone told me he felt guilty. We met at a small cafe near the industrial park. He was already there, sunglasses on the table, pretending to read a menu. When I sat down, he looked up fast, like he'd been waiting for a cue. Timmy, he said quietly. About last night. I'm sorry, man. It was supposed to be a dumb joke. I nodded once. You and her have a strange sense of humor. He exhaled. Yeah, I know, I messed up. I thought it was harmless. She always laughs at everything I say, and I figured that's just how she is. He paused, drumming his fingers on the table. But it's been weird for a while. I should have said something sooner. That got my attention. Weird how? Julian's eyes flicked toward the window. She's been messaging me, for months. I didn't move. What kind of messages? At first, nothing bad. Just random stuff. How's your day? Congrats on the new project. That kind of thing. Then it got different. Flirty. She'd say I'm funnier than you. Ask if I ever thought she was attractive. That kind of garbage. I stared at him. He didn't look smug. He looked tired. You should have told me the first time. He nodded, almost grateful I said it plain. I didn't think it was serious. I figured she was bored or looking for attention. I told her to talk to you about whatever was bothering her. I thought she'd stop. Did she? He shook his head. Not really. I stopped replying a few weeks ago. I swear I didn't flirt back. I didn't want to make it worse. Julian wasn't lying. He looked like someone who'd realized too late that his own charm had teeth. I stood up. All right. He blinked. All right? That's it? Yeah. I've got what I needed to hear. He leaned forward. Timmy, I didn't... I know, I said. You didn't mean for it to happen. You just let it happen. He shut his mouth and nodded. I paid for my half, walked out, and went home. Mara was at yoga. Her mat and bag were gone from the corner by the door. I sat on the couch for a minute, thinking about what Julian said, then went to her office nook. Her laptop was open on sleep mode. The password was the same as always. Her birthday. We used to share everything. No secrets. The screen lit up. Messages filled the right side of the screen. Her chat with Julian. I scrolled. Hundreds of them. At first it was harmless. Compliments, jokes, casual check-ins. Then the tone shifted. You always make me laugh. Timothy used to make me laugh like that. Sometimes I think I married too safe. Julian's replies were short. Mara, that's not cool. You should talk to him. Please stop saying stuff like that. She didn't stop. If we'd met first, do you think things would be different? I'm going to the gym tomorrow morning. Maybe you'll accidentally be there too. He never replied to that one. I took screenshots of everything, dated them, labeled them by month. Then I checked her folders, half expecting to find nothing else. But there it was, a Word document titled Notes, password protected. The same birthday again. It wasn't notes, it was her journal. I read a few lines and stopped halfway through the first paragraph, then kept going. There's something about Julian. When he smiles, it feels like the world pays attention. I wish Timothy had that spark. Another page? I think I picked the wrong brother. Maybe I just wanted stability and mistook it for love. I scrolled. Dozens of entries, all circling the same theme. Julian's energy, my supposed dullness, her fantasies about what if. I didn't feel angry, just finished. I copied the files, the screenshots, and exported the entire chat log. Everything went into a folder on my desktop labeled Mara, Messages, and Journal. Then I backed it up to a drive and slid it into my jacket pocket. By the time she came home, I was at my desk, working like it was any other day. She said something about class running long. I said okay without looking up. That night, she scrolled through her phone in bed, while I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Not because I was hurt, because I was planning. The next morning, I called Levine and Parker Family Law. I told the receptionist I needed to speak with an attorney about starting divorce proceedings. She asked if it was urgent. Yeah, I said. I'd like to get it over with. She booked me an appointment for the following morning. I closed my laptop, looked around the house, and realized something simple. This place had been quiet before Mara. I'd mistaken her noise for life. Now I had proof she wanted something else. And soon she could have it, without me in the way. At the meeting, Ms. Parker said she'd prepare a draft petition and propose settlement for me to review within the week. 2 weeks passed. Mara's birthday landed on a Saturday, and she made sure everyone knew it. Her parents, Alan and Denise, had offered to host, but she insisted we do it at our house, so it feels more personal. She spent the entire morning decorating, humming along to music, calling it a reset for us. I let her. By 5 o'clock, the living room was full. Her family came first, all smiles and chatter. My parents followed, quieter but polite. Julian showed up with a wrapped box of chocolates and that familiar cautious grin. Clara arrived last, helping my mom set down the dishes. Mara greeted everyone like a perfect hostess, bouncing between guests, complimenting outfits, laughing too loud. I stayed calm, polite, collected. Everyone assumed I was trying to make up for the dinner incident. Alan even clapped my shoulder and said, "Good to see you making peace, son." I nodded and smiled like a man with nothing to hide. On the table sat a large, beautifully wrapped box. Silver paper, gold ribbon, a matching tag that read, "For you." It was big enough to draw attention, but light enough that I'd carried it easily. People kept glancing at it, whispering guesses. Jewelry? A weekend getaway? One of those smart mirrors Mara always talked about? She couldn't stop smiling at it. As the evening went on, I stayed close to my parents, talking quietly with my dad about work. Mara floated around, entertaining like a politician. Every now and then she'd pat my shoulder or tell someone, "Timothy always does something thoughtful for my birthday. He's full of surprises." I heard it more than once. Julian mostly avoided her. He helped my mom refill drinks, kept his distance, but Mara didn't notice. She was too busy being the star of her own party. When the cake came out, candles flickering, everyone sang. Mara closed her eyes, made her wish, and blew them out. People clapped, laughed, took photos. Then, as if she couldn't resist, she pointed her fork toward Julian and said, "You know, Julian's the fun brother. He probably planned half of this just to make me laugh." The room went still for a half second, enough for the tension to crawl back in. I stood up, straightened my shirt, and said, "Speaking of surprises." I gestured to the big box. "Go ahead. Open your gift." Her face lit up again. "You didn't have to, but I knew you would," she said, grinning at the crowd as she untied the ribbon. Everyone leaned forward, expecting something shiny. She lifted the lid. The smile fell. The room went dead silent. Inside the box was a simple folder with my lawyer's logo on the corner, a draft divorce petition and proposed settlement, and a note clipped to the front. "Review and sign. Formal filing would come later." Her hands froze on the edges of the box. For a second, I thought she might laugh it off. Instead, the color drained from her face. "Timothy, what is this?" she whispered. I kept my voice level. "It's exactly what it looks like. You've been saying you'd be happier elsewhere. I'm just agreeing with you." Her parents stood immediately. Alan's voice cut through the silence. "You can't do this to her today. Not here? Not in front of everyone?" I turned toward him. "You might want to read what's in there before defending her." I reached into my briefcase and pulled out another folder. Thicker, heavier. "This one's for clarity." I opened it and spread the pages on the table. Screenshots of her messages to Julian, timestamps, and printed journal entries. I'd even marked sections in yellow. Gasps moved around the room. Julian's face tightened. He stepped forward. "It's real," he said quietly. I told her to stop. I didn't encourage any of it. Alan's mouth opened, then closed. Denise sank into her chair. My mom stared at her hands. Mara's voice cracked. "This is insane. Those were private messages. You had no right to go through my stuff." I met her eyes. "You stopped being private when you brought my brother into it." She looked at Julian, desperate. "Tell them you didn't think I was serious." He looked down. "You were serious, Mara." Her face broke. "It was jokes. Just stupid flirting. You know I don't mean half the things I say." I didn't respond. I gathered the papers, slid them back into the folder, and looked at her one last time. "You have until the weekend to move your things out." She shook her head, tears falling now. "You're ending this? Over nothing?" I adjusted my jacket. "I'm ending it because there's nothing left to fix." No one spoke. I nodded once to my parents, then to Clara, and walked out. Behind me, I heard Mara start to sob, her mother whispering her name, Julian's voice low, saying something I couldn't make out. But I didn't stop. Outside, the air was cold. My car was parked at the end of the driveway. As I opened the door, I caught a glimpse through the window. Everyone standing around Mara, stunned, silent, confused. I started the engine and drove off, leaving the noise and the smell of cake behind. Inside, Clara and my mom quietly ushered everyone out and locked up behind them. Mara left with her parents. It was still her birthday. She'd wanted attention. She got it. The morning after her birthday, the phone started ringing before sunrise. I let it ring. By noon, there were 10 missed calls and a string of messages that started with, "We need to talk," and ended with, "You're overreacting." I didn't reply to any of them. By the second day, she switched from pleading to angry. "You embarrassed me in front of my parents. Do you feel proud?" I muted the notifications. Her parents called next. Alan with his deep voice trying to sound reasonable. "Timothy, she's emotional. You could have handled this privately." I said, "So could she," and hung up. On the third day, she sent one last message. "Fine, I'll come get my stuff." I didn't respond. I worked from home that afternoon, let her pack without seeing me. She was there for 2 hours. When I walked through the hallway later, her closet was empty, drawers half open, shelves missing their books and photos. The house looked wrong, like it had been wiped clean. She'd taken her clothes, laptop, makeup, some furniture, half the dishes, and the coffee maker. I stood in the doorway and looked at the empty spot where her things used to be. I called a locksmith that same night, per Ms. Parker's advice. Sole title under the prenup meant I was within my rights once she'd removed her belongings. By Monday, I was back at work. I didn't tell anyone what happened. I just buried myself in schedules and project diagrams. When people asked about Mara, I said she was staying with family. It wasn't a lie. 2 weeks later, Ms. Parker filed the petition and proposed settlement in court. She arranged formal service on Mara the following week. Because of the prenup, it was clean and fast. Property stayed with me. The only thing left to divide was that small joint savings account. We set a hearing date for early spring. When the day came, I put on a dark suit and drove downtown. The courtroom was half empty, quiet except for the shuffle of papers. Mara sat across the room between her parents. She looked smaller somehow. Hair tied back, no makeup, the edge gone from her voice when she said hello. I nodded but didn't speak. The judge glanced over the documents. "Mr. Reyes, the house is solely yours per the agreement." "Yes, Your Honor." He turned to Mara's side. "Ms. Lewis, you've reviewed and understand the terms?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." He looked satisfied. "Then we'll proceed. The marriage of Timothy Reyes and Mara Lewis is hereby dissolved." It was over in 20 minutes. 4 months from start to finish. Not quick enough to forget, not long enough to heal, just done. Mara signed the final paperwork with shaking hands. She tried to meet my eyes, maybe looking for something. Anger, forgiveness, anything. I looked past her at the clock on the wall. She whispered something to her mother and left. When I got home, there was a small white envelope on the porch. My name written in her handwriting. Inside was a folded note. "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you." I placed it in the drawer with the rest of the documents. Life didn't snap back to normal, but it steadied. I kept working, cleaned out her side of the closet, replaced the coffee maker. Then one evening, Julian called. "Hey man, just a heads up. She's been messaging me again." I leaned back in my chair. "After the divorce?" "Yeah. Says she's sorry, that she misses me." I told her to stop. I didn't reply after that. "Good," I said. He sighed. She kept trying. Last night she showed up at my apartment, crying, saying everyone hates her. Said she just wanted someone to care. "What did you do?" I didn't open the door. I told her through the intercom to go home. Then I blocked her number. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then, "That's probably the best thing you've done in this whole mess." He didn't argue. Over the next few weeks, I started hearing things. Small talk at family dinners. Whispers from mutual friends. Mara's name came up less and less. But when it did, it was never kind. People said she'd been telling different versions of the story. First that I'd overreacted, then that Julian had led her on. Nobody bought it. Eventually, her own friends stopped defending her. Someone told Clara that Mara's boss had overheard co-workers gossiping about the brother story. She transferred to a different office soon after. By the end of summer, she wasn't getting invited anywhere. The woman who once couldn't live without attention had lost all of it. I didn't take pleasure in that. I didn't feel sorry either. It was just the natural result of what she built. Sometimes I'd pass a restaurant we used to go to, see couples laughing inside, and realize I felt nothing. No bitterness, no nostalgia, just distance. One night, my mom called and asked if I'd heard that Mara moved back in with her parents. I said no, and she said softly, "It's probably for the best." After we hung up, I walked through the house, my house, and noticed how clean it felt. The walls, the quiet, the order. Nothing missing, nothing extra. Mara had spent years chasing attention like it was air. Now she had silence, and I had peace. It had been a few months since the divorce finalized. Life had evened out. Work was steady, the house was quiet, and my weekends finally belonged to me. I didn't see Julian much, but that wasn't an accident. We kept things polite. Holiday texts, short replies, nothing more. Then, one afternoon, he showed up at my job unannounced. I was coming out of the workshop when I saw him leaning against my truck, hands in his jacket pockets, looking like a kid waiting for detention to start. "Hey," he said. "Hey." He looked around, then gestured toward the curb. "Can we talk for a minute?" We walked over and stood there beside the parking lot, the noise of compressors humming behind us. Julian took a deep breath. "I've been meaning to say this for a while. I messed up. I should have told you everything the moment she started messaging me. I didn't say anything." So he kept going. "You're my brother. I was supposed to have your back, not joke about your marriage in front of everyone like an idiot. I didn't think it'd go that far. I thought she was just being her usual self. Flirty, loud, whatever. I was stupid." He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes low. "I made it worse. I made you look bad. You didn't deserve that." I watched him for a moment, arms crossed. "You weren't malicious, Julian. You were naive. That's different. But yeah, you should have known better." He nodded like he'd been expecting that. "Yeah, I know." There was a pause. He looked older somehow, less polished, tired in a way I hadn't seen before. He kicked at a piece of gravel. "I still hate thinking about it. About her showing up at my place crying, begging to come in. I didn't open the door, but it stuck in my head. I don't know what she wanted from me." "Validation," I said. "Same thing she always wanted." He sighed. "Guess so." We stood there for another minute, then I said, "You don't owe me anything, Julian. Just don't make the same mistake twice." He gave a small, guilty smile. "Working on that." Then he left. A week later, I came home from work to find a car parked in my driveway. Not just any car, a black Mustang GT Fastback 2022, the kind I'd always talked about owning, but never bought because it wasn't practical. There was a bow on the hood like it came straight from a commercial. Julian stepped out from the side of the house, keys in hand. Surprise. I just stared at it. "What is this?" He grinned nervously. "It's yours. Don't freak out, it's used. And I bought it at auction through a dealer friend. My quarterly commission check covered most of it, and I negotiated the rest down. Title's clean. First year of insurance is on me." "You bought me a car," he shrugged. "Yeah, you've wanted one since college. You always said when things settled down, you'd get one." "Well, things are settled now." I ran a hand along the hood. The paint gleamed. "Julian, this is too much." "It's not enough," he said quietly. "I can't undo everything, but I can do something. Let me." I studied him. He wasn't joking, wasn't trying to charm his way out. He meant it. So I took the keys. "All right," I said. "Thanks." He smiled, relieved. "You should have seen your face, man. You looked like someone handed you a winning lottery ticket." "I've had worse surprises lately," I said, and that actually made him laugh. We sat on the porch steps after that, drinking sodas and talking like people who used to be close, but forgot how. The conversation stayed easy. Work, mom's cooking, Clara's latest home project. No mention of Mara, no need. When he left, he slapped the roof of the Mustang and said, "Take it for a drive, see if it feels right." It did. The engine rumbled like it had been waiting for me. I took it down the highway, windows open, the city lights sliding by. For the first time in a long time, my head was clear. We started talking again after that. Not every day, but enough. Lunches turned back into phone calls into visits. We didn't talk about what happened, but the silence between us wasn't heavy anymore. Julian was still Julian. Goofy, flirty, always chasing the next big idea. But he carried himself differently now. Quieter in a good way. One night, after dropping him off, I watched him walk back to his place and realized something simple. He wasn't cruel. He never had been. Just careless. And sometimes, carelessness is all it takes to break everything. By the time spring turned into summer, life had gone still in the best way possible. The house felt different, cleaner, calmer. I repainted the living room, fixed the squeaky door by the laundry room, and turned the spare bedroom into a small office. The kind of things I'd put off for years. Work was good too. My supervisor had started giving me more independence on projects. I spent most evenings in the garage, working on the Mustang Julian bought me. Sometimes I'd take it out after dinner and drive past the old places Mara and I used to go. The memories were there, but they didn't sting anymore. 4 months after the divorce finalized, I got a knock at the door. Saturday morning, no call ahead. When I opened it, Mara was standing there. She looked nothing like she used to. Hair pulled back, dark circles under her eyes, clothes too big. She tried to smile, but it came out thin. "Can we talk?" she said. I didn't invite her in, but I didn't close the door either. "About what?" She looked past me into the hallway, like she expected to see something familiar. I've been thinking a lot. I made mistakes, I know that. But I was confused, Timothy. I didn't know what I wanted. Seems like you figured it out, I said. You just picked the wrong place to find it. She winced but didn't leave. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I thought it was harmless. You and Julian were always close, and I wanted to feel close too. I thought maybe... I cut her off. You thought maybe it would make you feel special. You were right, just not in the way you wanted. Her voice cracked. I miss you. I miss us. Please. Can't we just start over? We don't even have to tell anyone right away. I'll do anything to fix it. No, I said flatly. She blinked like she hadn't heard me right. No? Not a chance. Her eyes filled with tears. You can't just throw away everything we had. You loved me once. I did, I said. And I loved the version of you that didn't measure me against everyone else. That version's gone. She stepped closer, desperate now. I've changed. I'm in therapy. I'm not talking to Julian. I held up a hand. Stop. This isn't a speech that gets you your old life back. You made your choice, and I made mine. I'm not angry anymore, but I'm done. She stared at me for a long second, then looked down at her shoes. You really mean that? Completely. Mara nodded slowly, then turned and walked to her car. She sat there for a minute before driving off. I closed the door, locked it, and didn't look out the window. That was the last time I saw her. A week later, Clara dropped by for dinner. She sat on the counter eating takeout while I cleaned tools off the table. By the way, she said casually, Mara's seeing someone new. Some guy she met at work. Good for her, Clara smirked. Apparently, she's already comparing him to you. Told her coworker he's not as stable, but more exciting. I shrugged. Sounds familiar. You don't care? Nope. She nodded, satisfied. Then I'd say you're officially over it. Guess I am. We finished eating, then she left. I sat for a while after she was gone, thinking how strange it was to feel nothing where a storm used to be. Julian started coming around again after that. Not often, but enough. He'd bring lunch on weekends or call when he was passing through town. It wasn't like before, but it was good. Steady, uncomplicated. One Sunday, my parents hosted dinner for the first time since everything happened. Same table, same dishes, same laughter, but no tension. Julian cracked a few jokes, kept them safe. My dad told him he was finally learning restraint, and everyone laughed. When we finished eating, my mom brought out coffee and said, "Feels nice to have everyone back together." She looked at me when she said it, and I nodded. It did feel nice. Julian and I ended up sitting on the porch after everyone left. He looked over at me and said, "You're really okay, huh?" "Yeah," I said. "For the first time, I think I actually am." He smiled. "Told you peace suits you better than drama." "Peace doesn't ask for attention," I said. "That's why it lasts." He laughed quietly and stood up. "You're starting to sound like Dad. Then maybe I'm finally learning something." That night, I sat in the living room with the windows open. The air smelled like rain. The clock ticked softly against the wall. I thought about everything that had happened. How Mara had mistaken attention for love. How I traded noise for silence and found peace. Mine held. Hers turned into noise again. The phone buzzed on the table. Julian sending a photo of the Mustang after he borrowed it for the weekend. "Runs like a dream," the message said. I smiled and set the phone down. The house was mine. The quiet was mine. And for once, that was enough. I leaned back, listening to the rain start to fall, and thought, she mistook attention for love. I chose silence, and it became peace. Turns out, I was right about mine. And I wasn't lonely. Not anymore. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.